Hello and welcome to MOS Live. My name is Sarah, my pronouns are she and her, and I will be your moderator today for this Ask a Scientist about dinosaurs. If you would like to see captions, you can press the CC button at the bottom of your screen and select Show Captions. If you'd like to ask a question today on Zoom, you can press the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type in your question. If you'd like a shout out, please leave your name and age. So now I'd like to invite my museum educators to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Becca. My pronouns are she and her. And today I have a little sauropod emoji next to my name, which I know some of you may not be able to see, but I chose that because sauropods are long-necked dinosaurs and are not winner. I don't want to call it a loser, but the dinosaur that did not win the Massachusetts vote recently was an ancestor to the sauropod. So it's kind of a little bit of an homage to that.
Hi everyone, my name is Eric. My pronouns are he, him, and I chose a shark for my emoji today because my favorite prehistoric animal is not actually a dinosaur. It didn't even live at the same time as the dinosaurs, but it did live millions of years ago. It was the Megalodon, which is a shark the size of a city bus, over 50 feet long with a mouthful of teeth the size of my head. I love that animal.
Hi everyone, my name is Susan. My pronouns are she and her, and I have a T-Rex, a Tyrannosaurus Rex emoji next to my name. Couple reasons. One, there's not actually that many dinosaur emojis out there, even though there should be, but also to complement Becca's sauropod is because the other dinosaur that was in the vote to be Massachusetts state dinosaur was a carnivore. I'm a big fan of carnivores, and so that's why I went with a carnivore emoji. And if you want to find out more about the dinosaur being made the Massachusetts state dinosaur, we don't have a state dinosaur in Massachusetts, but we're looking to pass legislation to make one. And so there's a Facebook page you can follow along with about the Massachusetts state dinosaur legislation as Podokesaurus holyokensis is being put forward in our state legislature.
All right, so we're going to start with a question from Declan and Parker, age 5. What is the biggest dinosaur?
Well,
that's you.
I was gonna say, I might as well answer it because the biggest dinosaur was a sauropod or a long-necked dinosaur. There were a lot of different types of sauropods or long-necked dinosaurs, but the biggest one was likely one that was either called the Argentinosaurus or the Titanosaur or the Patagotitan, or there's a whole bunch of other really large ones that Susan has an example of, and they could be many, many, many tons in weight and up to about 180 feet long. So they were huge.
All right, and Declan and Parker also want to know, what is the smallest dinosaur?
So we probably haven't discovered the smallest dinosaur because the smaller an animal is, the less chance it's going to fossilize well enough that it's still going to leave any remnant after 66 million years, which is how long it's been since the dinosaurs went away. There was a really cool news story about a year ago that the smallest dinosaur ever had been discovered trapped in amber. And it was a tiny little bird-like looking dinosaur with sharp teeth. And in the time since, we think actually that may have been more of a lizard, actually a reptile and not a dinosaur. So the smallest dinosaur that we know of, I don't know off the top of my head, but something very small, about the size of maybe a hummingbird or a sparrow, which coincidentally is what some of the dinosaurs who survived that event 66 million years ago turned into. They evolved into our modern birds. And so the smallest dinosaur probably looked like a tiny little bird.
It is actually a bee hummingbird. Somehow I have that on the top of my head. I don't know, but a bee hummingbird. So super teeny tiny hummingbird.
All right, Una, age 12, wants to know, what is the newest or most recently discovered dinosaur?
That's a good question. So I don't know if either of you have any more current information. I was more just going to say that probably maybe a couple times a year, maybe even once a month, a new dinosaur is described. Also, at least once a month, if not more, we get new information about dinosaurs that we have discovered before, but might not have known everything or much about them. So what the newest one is, the newest one I could really think of was what Eric was talking about, that tiny little one. But do you guys have a name of one?
No, like you said, we're discovering so many now that it's hard to keep up with the newest one. By the time you read all about the newest one, there's another new one in the news. We're discovering dinosaurs right now faster than we ever have before, sometimes 50 a year, which means there's a brand new dinosaur discovered and described once a week. So we're just getting really good at finding fossils, preserving them, extracting them, and getting more information out of them than ever before.
And reclassifying ones that we already had, or classifying together ones we thought that they were different and putting them back together. So that's what's so exciting about dinosaurs is odds are we're never going to find all of them, like every dinosaur that ever lived. That's not going to happen. And the fact that there were thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different types is we're going to constantly be finding them. And as Eric said, we're finding new methods all the time to discover new ones. So sorry, we don't have an exact answer, but hopefully you get something out of the fact that we're talking about that there are tons of new dinosaurs all the time.
All right, Ambrose, age 9, wants to know, what is the largest mammal we have found during the Mesozoic period?
Question.
About the size of a beaver.
Yeah.
Really, and mostly a lot smaller than that. Our mammal ancestors were able to survive that impact event that caused global climate change and catastrophic extinctions because they were able to stay small. They didn't need that much food. They could probably burrow under the ground. And so kind of scampering around under the feet of dinosaurs for millions of years, and then the dinosaurs disappeared, then they could evolve and fill all those roles that dinosaurs previously had. So the biggest mammal, probably no bigger than maybe a medium-sized dog at that point.
So speaking of small animals, Neville, age 5, wants to know if there were mice during the dinosaur periods.
So mice are a modern day animal, just like humans are a modern day animal, and many types of birds, those are modern day animals. So there probably weren't mice as we know them today. But as Eric said, there were a lot of little mammals running around. Some of those were probably rodents. I'm guessing rodents go back that far, although I'm not 100% positive. I'm guessing there were ancestors of rodents. So I'm betting that a lot of the mammals that lived looked a lot like a modern day mouse, but they technically weren't what we know as mice today. But they were probably little guys that lived underground. They probably had a tail, probably a little nose, something like that. So it might have looked just like a mouse, but not actually a mouse. It's a great question, though. I hadn't thought about that. Mammals during dinosaur times. Those are great questions.
Grayson would like to know, how likely is it that dinosaurs were feathered?
Very. In fact, scientists have found evidence that quite a few dinosaurs did have feathers. There has been fossilized evidence of parts of feathers, of where feathers were attached to the skin of the dinosaurs, and even, I believe, a dinosaur that was pretty much covered in feathers. Now, it is believed that mostly a lot of this feather sort of fluff kind of covering was on the raptors, so like the two-legged dinosaurs, but it doesn't mean that we won't discover feathers on other types of dinosaurs. It's very possible. It's just that for now, there have been raptors discovered with feathers, and scientists believe that even the T-Rex could have feathers too, even though we haven't discovered it just yet.
Sebastian wants to know if dinosaurs had 3-chamber hearts.
I don't know. I don't know if we can know. It's really difficult to get information about soft tissue in dinosaurs, of what the heart, the lungs, all of those internal organs are. Sometimes we can learn about some soft tissues like skin because we can get impressions of them. Like Becca was just talking about feathers. We can get impressions of those, maybe some skin impressions or some skin fossilized. But knowing their internal organs, I don't know that we can that was great that you mentioned like chickens, because that's what scientists would do, is probably compare them to modern day birds of which they are very similar to. But I don't know definitively if they did have no one knows definitively, but I'm not even sure I've even read anything about whether or not we think dinosaurs had internal organs similar to modern day birds, or if that's something that we can't necessarily even guess about. But that's another great question. These are real. We've done dinosaurs for like months now, and these are really good questions we hadn't talked about before.
All right, Libby, age 6, wants to know which dinosaur had the longest neck.
That would be one of the sauropods, or the long necks. I don't know. I mean, probably whichever one was the largest. It's a little bit hard to tell exactly which one was the largest based on just a few specimens, but whichever one was the largest likely had the longest neck too. And they had a lot more neck vertebra than we do. In fact, we have 7, I believe. Is that right? Human biology is not my thing.
That's right.
Something like that, but they could have up to 19, so a lot more than us, and they were really, really large vertebra too. They were giant bones, so they had incredibly long necks, and that was probably good for them because they needed to eat a lot of vegetation, so that long neck would allow them to get to parts of trees that many other dinosaurs could not reach.
All right, Tommy, age 7, wants to know what was the first dinosaur to become extinct?
So we don't know exactly, but it wasn't in that time, 66 million years ago, at the end of the dinosaurs. The first dinosaur to go to extinct then probably were the dinosaurs living directly under where the asteroid or comet hit in Mexico. We've seen evidence that it turned into a 100-mile wide crater. So anything living there went extinct pretty much instantly. But extinction is a constant thing that happens on Earth. So dinosaurs have been around for over 100 million years before that. And it wasn't as if all of them evolved and then lived through the whole time of the dinosaurs and then all went extinct right at the end. They were constantly evolving, changing their size, changing what they ate, their body type. And so some dinosaurs that evolved very early, some of the very first dinosaurs, went on to have really successful ancestors, like much later, the Tyrannosaurus. Some of those went extinct almost right away because the environment changed. All throughout the time of the dinosaurs, the sea levels rose and fell, the climate was changing, volcanoes were going off and giving out lots of gases in the atmosphere. So the first dinosaur to go extinct was probably really soon after the first dinosaur became a dinosaur. And it just really didn't fit in with its environment and wasn't able to survive. So we don't know exactly what it is, but we see plenty of dinosaurs that only show up for the very first part of the fossil record when dinosaurs existed about 200 million years ago.
A lot of those were smaller. A lot of times we call them, like Becca mentioned early on, like an early type of sauropod. So we're so much more familiar with all of the later dinosaurs, Triceratops and Stegosaurus and T-Rex and sauropods, Brontosaurus, that we kind of refer to all the early ones as like proto-sauropod or a proto-raptor or something earlier on. So it was probably a lot of the types of dinosaurs we're familiar with, but like smaller or more primitive forms. And that's what lived, in that 200 million year ago time frame. But it's harder to know. We don't have as many from that long ago either.
All right, Declan, age 5, wants to know, did dinos live in the water? And Una, age 12, wants to know, were there small swimming dinosaurs? I've seen bigger ones, but not small ones.
I love it. I just have to jump right in. I know everyone's excited, but yes, so there were dinosaurs in the water, but in particular, there was one type of dinosaur that we've recently learned a lot about, including a study that came out a few weeks ago that might dispute what I'm about to say. But Spinosaurus is a very large dinosaur, and it lived during the Cretaceous period, so the kind of end part of the dinosaur reign. And it did, in fact, spend a lot of time in the water. And even if this study says it might not have swam, it might have waded a little bit, it definitely spent time in the water, whether that was swimming, whether that was wading through the water, whether that was sort of being crocodilian and kind of laying wait for some animals to come by it. It did live in the water, but that is the only dinosaur that we know of that spent most of its time in the water. There are other aquatic reptiles like the plesiosaur or the mosasaur or the ichthyosaur, and they all lived in the water, but they're not considered dinosaurs. They're a completely different category. They're just a classification thing that they're a little bit different. But Spinosaurus is still considered to be a dinosaur, and there is evidence that it did spend most of its time in the water in some capacity.
Awesome. And thank you for answering Grayson's question of did the Spinosaurus live? But Rose, age 9, wants to know, what is the oldest dinosaur from the earliest period that ever existed that we have found?
So that one's a little bit also kind of debated and up in the air. It's one of those things that Susan was just saying, we don't really know necessarily because we don't have a ton of fossils. I've read studies that there's one dinosaur, and I cannot remember the name of it, that could have been as early as 250 million years ago. However, a lot of people are thinking that that was actually a reptile, not necessarily a dinosaur. So one of the ones that I've definitely heard is a dinosaur was Coelophysis, and it lived approximately 220 million years ago to about 200 million years ago. So it would be one of the earliest ones. But again, it's one of those things where we don't really know what the earliest dinosaur actually was.
And Coelophysis was one, that's it looks like a raptor, as we know, like a raptor or velociraptor, but small. Yeah, but like a little guy. Actually very similar to Podokesaurus holyokensis, which is hopefully soon to be the Massachusetts state dinosaur.
And actually also Coelophysis was believed to have walked around New England at some point too.
Yeah.
So very similar.
Yes, yes.
And I'll add that there was no sharp line where there were almost dinosaurs, and then one day one of those animals laid an egg of a dinosaur, and then the age of the dinosaur started. It was very small changes over a really long time. And where we consider the first dinosaur is pretty arbitrary. We just kind of say, this is what we consider a dinosaur. This is what we're going to call it. It's almost like the argument about whether Pluto should be a planet or not. It's there, and it's kind of an in-between, and it's up to us whether we want to call it a planet or not. The same for these early animals that were kind of like dinosaurs. They were kind of different enough from reptiles like crocodiles that lived at the same time. But where we put the line of the first dinosaur is up to us, and we're constantly moving it as we find more fossils and more information.
All right, Libby, age 6, wants to know, where in the world have Triceratops fossils been found and how recently?
Ooh, great question. So got our friend Cliff back here behind Becca and I. So Triceratops is the Triceratops we're most familiar with, Triceratops horridus, mostly found out in the Western United States. It's found primarily in the Hill Creek Formation, which spans Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, down into Colorado. And there we've discovered Triceratops has been one of the most discovered or found dinosaurs ever, because one of the premier dinosaur hunters, or dinosaur paleontologists, I should say, Jack Horner, actually wanted to find more out about Triceratops in general. And when you find only one of a fossil or a couple of a fossil, it's hard to really know what they're like altogether. That would be like finding the skeleton of an NBA basketball player and the skeleton of me. You know, we don't even look like the same species, you know, someone who's 6'10" versus someone who's 5'5". Totally different species. So you need a lot. You'd have to find dozens or even hundreds in order to get a better idea of what all the animals look like. So over the past 20 or 30 years, Jack Horner has unearthed over 100, like 150 maybe even, Triceratops fossils, individuals and multiple bones of them, so that he can build a better picture of what they look like. Because you only find one, that could be a random one that's different from all of the others. So there's been a lot of Triceratops found all out in the Western United States, the Badlands area, Montana, all out there. So we're lucky. It really is a cool one that we can find here in the United States.
So Parker, age 5, actually asked the question that I wanted to follow up with, which is, which country have the most dinosaurs been found?
Found dinosaurs in just about every country, in just about every continent. Some are better than others and have more, not because that's where dinosaurs lived, but because that's where it's easier to find fossils from this time. So for example, here in Massachusetts, we don't have the rock layers right on the surface that are the time of the dinosaurs very much. We don't find very many fossils. We find some footprints. We've got some really great footprint site here in New England. If you go out to those badlands of South Dakota, Wyoming, that's where you get rocks carved away, and we can see those fossils from 65, 100 million, 150 million years ago. But there's been tons of recent fossil discoveries in China, all across China. We know of lots of fossils being found in South America with those giant sauropods like Becca was talking about. There's really interesting fossils found in Europe, which was a series of islands for a lot of the time that dinosaurs lived, and actually had some smaller than usual dinosaurs, smaller versions of them. We found dinosaurs in Antarctica because it wasn't always on the South Pole. That continent has moved there in more recent times. It's where it is on our globe, but in the time of the dinosaurs, it was attached to all of the other continents. And so we found dinosaurs everywhere. I don't know off the top of my head which country has the record for the most, but it depends on how we look and what they have.
I would guess China, just because geography-wise, China is also one of the largest countries. Like, I don't care how many dinosaurs you're going to find in France. It's small compared to China or the US. But China also has some great areas for preservation of it. And so there's been a lot found in China. There's been a lot found in the US. Those are two of the largest geographical sized countries. Russia also really big, but there's so much cold and frozen tundra on a lot of it that it's going to be harder to find them there. Again, South America and Brazil, it's a huge country size wise. So that's part of it. So it's sizes of the country is going to win, but then also how well you can find the fossils there is going to be another one.
Grayson, age 7, wants to know, does the T-Rex really have a bite force of 6 tons?
I almost want to say I thought it was like 8 or 10 tons maybe, but yes, it's a lot. It has an incredibly massive bite force. In fact, it's so strong that it is like the strongest bite that has ever been measured for any animal. And scientists have been able to take a T-Rex skull and kind of recreate it through a series of experiments, kind of using technology to figure out how this animal would have actually been able to bite things and eat. And that's why the T-Rex is just such a powerful predator, because this bite force was so strong that really even one tiny bite of really any animal would be gone, and the T-Rex would have food right away.
All right, Brooke, age 4, wants to know, what dinosaurs eat the most fish?
Spinosaurus.
Probably yes.
Yeah, to eat fish, you probably have to be in the water, comfortable in the water. Probably not too much of the T-Rex standing over a lake and waiting patiently and then biting some big fish that happen to swim by. So I would say probably the Spinosaurus as the most comfortable in the water fossil that we found. But not a lot of dinosaurs we found are too aquatic. So they probably spent most of their time on land and not too much in the water.
Pterosaurs aren't dinosaurs. We'll start with that. But we believe that pterosaurs often lived along cliffs, kind of like seabirds might today. And so it's probably a good chance that a lot of the pterosaurs, a lot of the flying reptiles would have eaten a lot of fish. They also had that kind of spear mouth as well that Spinosaurus had, that birds today that eat by the water, those types. So I think that was it. But we'll go Spinosaurus because that's Becca's favorite.
I love it.
All right, and for our last question, it's going to be from Una, age 12. Where can I read and learn more about brand new dinosaur discoveries happening?
There are a lot of resources, and I'm sure each one of us could tell you something even different and kind of compile it into a list. One of my favorite places to look is National Geographic, because they really do focus on a lot of animal science, and they're also pretty good at reporting on a lot of really awesome dinosaur science. So I like to check that out pretty regularly and see what's going on. But again, there's so many possible places that you could learn about dinosaur science.
Yeah, from the museum, we've got, our Ask a Scientist. You ask us what's the newest one. We didn't know any off the top of our head today. Apologies, but you can often find that out here. And sometimes even if you just search like the latest headlines in the story, if you do, I hate to say a Google search, but and you have a reputable source, if New York Times and Dinosaurs comes up, there's probably a cool dino discovery out there, CNN and Dinosaurs, and you'll find a cool source. But National Geographic is probably one of the best ones to go to, totally.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Everyone say goodbye, wave goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
All right, and thank all of you for being amazing scientists today. You asked so many great questions, and a lot of questions that I had never heard before or thought of before. So if you liked today's presentation, you can support the museum by visiting engage.mos.org/welcome. And if you would like to see more of our virtual offerings and come to our Ask a Scientist, you can find those all at mos.org/mos@home. We also have a lot of other cool materials, such as our podcast that you can download there. So feel free to check out that website and see everything we're doing. So thank you all. Have a great day.